Fresh and Buds.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh. You can call me Fresh, Tom, whatever you guys want. You guys are all my buds, and I'm joined by a special bud today, Mr. Tannon Grace. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well, Tommy. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited. Let's get going.
Yeah. We're gonna talk some fun stuff today. Take a look at 2021 and how important it was to Flesh and Blood in general, and also get a feel for you as a caster, as a player, as a person. So, but before that, I think a good way to kind of get a feel for you as a player is to crack a pack. So, are you ready to crack a pack of Tales of Aria First Edition?
Let's do it. It's my favorite set. Let's go.
Oh yeah, mine too. I mean, this is, especially from a limited perspective, it has been amazing. Let me get that sweet sound of a cracked pack on the mic there. Throw it over there. We got.
I love it. We're probably not going to get the same with the new packaging that's coming out with Everfest, which, by the way, huge fan of the new packaging. The sound will probably obviously be different, and I don't know if I'm going to sound weird from this, but that new pack smell, like when cards have come out of a fresh pack, like it like harkens back to my childhood. Like I started playing Magic in like 1994 or something like that. I was 10. So, opening a pack, it kind of, it's like, those memories, like whenever you like taste your mother's cooking for the first time in a few years, it like brings you back to being a kid or something like that. Like the sound of a pack cracking open and the smell of it, just absolutely love it. Brings me back.
Oh yeah, same. And we will see. I mean, I hope the smell's still a little bit there with the paper.
Might be different,
packaging. But I am a fan of the paper. I think this would be great. And well,
huge fan.
I'm excited to see how it sounds on the mic. So, first out of the pack is a blue So Tomorrow. For those at home, it is the Earth action. You may put target Earth or Elemental action card with cost 2 or greater from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. Banish So Tomorrow, and if it's played from Arsenal, draw a card. How do you like this card? You open your first pack at a draft. You take a look at this blue So Tomorrow. What are the thoughts that go through your head?
So Tomorrow for me is a card that's indicative of like a big thing that happened in the set where they really wanted to prioritize the Arsenal slot, and playing from it, they wanted to kind of give you a reward. I think in this set, more so than any other set, you were rewarded for setting up for your next turn kind of thing. Putting a card in Arsenal, and then next turn, like if you play this from Arsenal, you get to draw a card. There's a lot of cards like that in the set. Or, if you reveal certain cards to Lexi, something happened. Like Lexi getting to use Arsenal slots, obviously, it's a big obvious thing. This is a card that initially, when I saw it, I don't generally like cards like this very often. Like overall, I'm like, I think this is one of those cards that I just rather attack you. I'd rather have a card that does something that affects the board. I think it's the way we put it in Magic. It does something that affects the game right away.
Yeah.
It's like an attack or a pump or something. But the more I played with it, the more I really liked it in this format, especially once Oldhim got more popular, because the game started going a lot longer and it made this card a lot better. And so when the games are going longer, this card's pretty good. It's not going to be good when it's like Lightning Briar versus Lightning Lexi, and the game's going to go 3 turns.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So.
And it's a great Earth pitch for Oldhim as well at the blue. Next we got Red Winter's Bite. This is the 0 cost ice action. Target hero discards a card unless they pay 3 resources. Go again.
Card I severely underrated when it first came out, and this is one of the ones I had to see it in practice more to get like the full effect of it. But in the right build, especially like the Ice Lexi builds, this is a card that is very, very good and very important in those decks.
Yeah, and especially coming from Magic, it's straight up, discard without choice. It wouldn't feel good. So, but yeah, exactly. You had to see it in practice, and I'm a fan of Winter's Bite too, and obviously the red one's great. This is a card I don't typically play. I've seen play is Invigorate Yellow. This is or Invigorate any of the colors I haven't really played with much. This is the 0 cost elemental action. Your next attack you fuse. This turn gains +3 on the yellow. Go again.
These cards I like more than the average person, I think, and that's probably saying a lot when it comes to certain ones. Any of the cheap to free pump spells in the set, I'm a big fan of. Like, big fan. I think they're the easiest ways to win games of limited, and we've seen easiest ways to win games of blitz as well. And whenever you're starting to see it creep into classic constructed with the lightning briar decks, it's just cheap spells are good, free cards are good, but
Yeah.
it's one of those ones you have to go through hoops a little bit to make it good. But when it's good, boy, is it very good.
Oh yeah, yeah, very efficient when you can make it work. Absolutely. Next we have Yellow Electrify. This is the one cost lightning action. So kind of like our So Tomorrow. If it's played from Arsenal, you'll draw a card, and the next attack action card that hits a hero this turn deals 2 damage to them.
One of the ones I liked a lot when I first started playing the set, and then I kind of like backed off a tiny bit on it. It wasn't as good as I thought it was. That being said, it's still very good. Great card to play out of your arsenal. Good enough card in the lightning decks just to get through that extra damage. You just want to kind of pile it on. This is a card I think people misplayed quite a bit by playing it from their hand too much. This is a card that like I really think you need to play from your arsenal. I think you need to draw a card, and it also needs to be part of like a 5-card turn or a 4-card turn very, very often for it to be good.
Which I guess in Lexi really can go off,
Yeah.
and you can get some real good stuff going on there. Our first rare is the blue explosive growth. This is a 1 costed, 1 attack, 3 defense, Earth Fusion. If it was fused, whenever it deals damage, attacks you control this turn gain +1 this combat chain, and when you attack with it, deal 1 arcane damage.
Really good card, really powerful. It's starting to see its way into some constructed formats a little bit, excuse me.
Yeah.
And we had a little bit before the show started. I got a little tickle in my throat. I don't know what's going on, but a card that again, you have to go through some hoops to make it really good, but when you do, boy, is it very, very good. And in the right decks, I think it's very good. Now, it being like more of an Earth card means that you don't get to go as wide as you would if you were like more the like super lightning deck and just had a million zeros in your deck, but it can still be used to great effect by pumping up 1 or 2 attacks in a turn. If it hits, like obviously you get a bunch of extra good stuff out of it. So
definitely. Now here's a card I think you're gonna really like is the Red Weave Earth. 0 cost Earth action. Your next Earth or Elemental attack action this turn that you play this turn gets +3, and if it's fused, it gains +4 instead.
yeah, not much more. I mean, I think the cat's out of the bag when it comes to these cards. That these were very, very good. I remember starting to first pick these in my local drafts and my drafts with some of the better players in the game. Like I remember we were drafting. It was like myself, Tark Patel, Matt Rogers, like a really good local player from mine, Brian Basoko, another really good local player that I used to live with named Jonathan Job, and then like Don Delta Fico would get involved in these. Like I was the worst player in the draft is what I'm trying to get at. It'd be like 7 or 8 sickos, if you want to call them that. And I remember like starting to like first pick cards like this and talking to people about it afterwards. And we all kind of got on the train afterwards. Like, yeah, these are the cards that win games. Like the effects of like this and Overflex have on a game are very hard to replicate with any other cards. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this would probably be my first pick out of the pack.
Yeah, so far I think I'm on Weave Earth as well. This early, I mean the card performs above expectations. We have a foil. It is a common foil, unfortunately. It is blue. Yeah, it's blue. Stir the Wildwood. This is the it's 3 attack, 3 defense, Earth Fusion. If you dealt arcane damage to an opposing hero this turn, it gains +2, and if it was fused, it gains +2.
Really, like I think this is one of the best attacking cards in the set, just for what it is. If you get what I'm saying, like it's not just a free spell, it's not a ball lightning or anything like that. But this is one of the ones that just hits really, really hard. And I find that this one is kind of the backbone of my Earth decks. I generally want to have like multiple copies of this card in my Earth decks to really make sure I can finish the games off, hit really hard, and just continue to attack because you want to be attacking for generally 5 or 6 a turn. Unlimited if you can.
Yeah.
And even if it's from one source, it's fine. So because you get to fuse here, you're probably setting up for a pretty big turn.
Yeah, no, I agree. I especially on the red and then the blue obviously is a role filler as well. I'm pretty high on Stir the Wildwood as well, but the next card everybody's pretty high on is the red Bramble Spark. 0 cost elemental Runeblade action, has Earth Fusion. When the next attack action card you play this turn gains, when you attack with this, deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. And when fused, the next attack action card you play this turn gains +3.
I may have spoke too soon on what's going to be my first pick because I would highly consider this one, which I assume you're going to say the same, right?
Yeah, I'm on Bramble Spark a little bit over
Mhm.
the Weave Earth. However, I can't help but stay open, mostly because I like to force Oldham. But yeah, Bramble
Yeah.
Spark's pretty up
I
there.
do think, I could probably make an entire podcast episode about staying open versus just taking powerful cards and like
Yeah.
talking it out because I do think both have huge merit
Hmm.
to how you draft or whatever. But the one thing that I would hate about having this is the fact that this and Weave Earth have seemed to be the two best cards in the pack so far, and it's not the best signal to send to your left when you're drafting as well. But hey, we deal with it to take good cards, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So I would say Bramble Spark is the front runner here for us. Our item, or I guess it would have been equipment, is Amulet of Earth. This is the blue. Go again, instant, destroy it. Attack action cards, you gain +1, or gain +1 attack and 1 defense this turn. Activate only if you've Earth fused this turn.
Yeah, pretty good card. Something you could kind of hope on the wheel, especially if you take one of the Earth cards, early. So even though you're probably hoping Stir the Wildwood comes back if you take one of the Earth cards like Bramble Spark or something like that, or Weave Earth, but this would be a nice consolation prize to get pick 8 or 9 out of the pack. So I wouldn't be upset about getting this one back.
Absolutely, yeah. I would like to, hopefully wheel it as well.
Mhm.
Next we have the blue Thump. I'm a huge fan of Thump. This is one of my favorite cards to end games with in Tales of Aria Limited. So this is the 4 costs, 4 attack, 3 attack, or 3 defense. If its base attack or if its attack is greater than its base attack, it gains dominate. When it hits a hero, they discard a card.
Yeah, absolutely great card that you kind of have to build your deck around, right? Something it's a phrase we came up with while we were doing a lot of casting for this. We kind of, every time we say this, like we call it pump a thump.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get the power higher than its base power? And so if I knew that I had a card like this, or like let's say I took a Cracker Jacks early, these are cards that I'm actively looking for in my deck.
Absolutely, and it makes cards almost like Strength of Sequoia a little bit more, in the realm of playability, and also works with the Seismic Surge token, which I've been known to hopefully chain 2 turns in together like that. Next we have Red Frazzle. So this is our first arrow attack. Cost 1, 5 attack. Has lightning fusion. If it was fused, whenever attack would deal damage this turn, instead deals that much damage +1.
Uh, so I have this weird thing with me. I don't know how to say this. Maybe it's maybe it's a crutch. Maybe it's a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't see Lexi cards when I open the pack. They just don't exist to me. Like when I open my first pack, just because there's almost no Lexi card that I'm gonna first pick over any of the good commons or rares from the other elements. Like I'm probably just gonna take an elemental card over it, or something like a good lightning or earth card over them, because I would much rather be in Briar or Oldham than in Lexi, because of the fact that, especially as we kind of learned the format better, you mentioned it yourself. You force Oldham, right? And you're going
Yeah.
to generally start seeing 2 to 3 Oldham drafters at a table, and their decks are going to be good. And it is so hard to beat a decent Oldham player with any Lexi deck.
Yeah.
It just makes it very difficult on you. And then Briar is Briar. It can just easily beat you because their hands are very good. So I found Lexi to be the weakest of the 3 on average. But don't let me dissuade you from that. If you're one of 2 Lexi players or 1 Lexi player at your table, your deck can be very, very good. I'm just not the kind of person who's going to be first picking cards like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, I've seen Lexi perform at a very, very intense level. But
Absolutely.
I am on the similar train as you. I open a pack and I do not see arrows. I see blue cards mostly, but
There's some Lexi players listening to us right now that are just shaking their fist at us right now. They're like, these guys, they've turned off the podcast.
yeah, probably. But or you guys can rest well in knowing that you're going to get past all the arrows
yeah.
you want from us.
Sit to my left. Yeah.
Next we have
Prove me wrong. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. Blue Bramble Spark, so double Bramble Spark pack. I don't know if that is a misprinting or anything, but yeah, Bramble Spark is the same card as we mentioned before. This is just the blue one.
Yeah, definitely take the red one over this one, but and cross your fingers that maybe this one wheels. It just depends. I will say this: the way the pack is shaping out, I'm way more likely to take an Earth card to pick one now something like Weave Lightning or the Bramble Spark, because it's very likely that you're going to wheel an Earth card out of this pack. This is what, like the 4th or 5th card that goes really well into either into like some kind of Earth Briar type deck, which is generally like I'm hoping for Briar every time I draft. Locally I get it a little more often because locally there's a bigger representation of Lexi and Oldhim than there probably should be than what we saw at like the events that went on, like nationals and the callings, where you saw 3 to 5 or 6 Briars at every table.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think with the second Bramble Spark, which I don't know if that can possibly happen, 2 Bramble Sparks in one pack.
So, I've heard that there are some. I mean, I've seen it happen multiple times. So yes, it's possible. I've heard there are some packaging errors when it comes to things, because there's supposed to be 2 of everything, right? Like the 2 Earth, 2 Lightning, 2 2 whatever, and like 2 of all the elements, and you can kind of get a signal from that. I remember it actually came up at nationals. One of the drafts got stopped, and some judges had to get involved. And I won't mention the player's name, but it was a highly known player that like got a pack, and they were like, they thought something either was completely wrong with the pack or something nefarious had been going on in the draft because of the amount of a certain element that was going on in a pack on like pick 4. It's like there's no way this could happen, or pick 3 or whatever. I won't mention any names because it was a kind of a hoopla type thing. But
Gotcha.
I think some of the stuff, like I think overall it's pretty good, but every now and then something slips through.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Nonetheless, that we had a double Bramble Spark pack. Now, next we have Emerging Avalanche. This is the yellow one. This is a 2-cost Elemental Guardian action aura. This is the Ice Fusion one. If it was fused, you create a Frostbite, and has go again. And the next turn, you destroy it to give your first attack +2.
Now, this is your kind of card, right? But this can be important in your deck while not being a high pick, but like good against the like aggro decks in the drafts, right?
Yeah, now I'm not as high on Emerging Avalanche as I am on Strength of Sequoia, just because I don't get the fuse as much. No, I mean the Frostbite fuse obviously is great if you have the critical amount of ice cards in your deck, but I'm never opposed to playing it, because if anything, it blocks for 3, and that's really important in Oldhim. So, and usually you play. I mean, I tend to play every card I can in Oldhim just because I want to outlast my opponents usually. So
yeah, on average, what is the size of your deck on average? Like just a number.
I guess like
it doesn't have to be specific. You can say like high 30s, low 40s,
anywhere from 33 to 36. I would say.
Okay,
yeah.
I've kind of wondered myself, because like I've only drafted it a few times, and I found myself playing more than 30, but I didn't know what the number was. Also depends on your playables too. So.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, especially with Oldhim in this format, right? As opposed to like Magic, right? You don't tend to play more cards than you need to in a limited deck in Magic, or even constructed. But
it's really frowned upon, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But Oldhim in limited, and the way Flesh and Blood is, you're gonna see all your cards most likely anyway. So I find that it is a totally fine thing to do with your slower decks in limited. So yeah. We have another red arrow that we probably wouldn't have seen in the pack, me and you, but it's Flake Out. This is the 1-cost 5 attack Ice Fusion. If it was fused, gains Dominate.
These are one of the ones that I actually like. These are the ones that I'm looking for. Generally, when I'm playing Lexi, I want as many red arrows as I could possibly get, and then I'll fill the blues and yellows in with the other cards if I can. But I want my arrows to do as much as possible, and to be possibly fused as much as possible, so that you can just almost always. This one, it doesn't matter as much, but you want to be choosing Dominate on Quiver as much as possible. So, can I say like 2 things about that real quick? I mean, one thing about that real quick.
Yeah.
For anyone at home, that if you're still drafting a lot of TOA, I understand. If you bust a legendary, you're going to want to take it just because it's expensive. You want it for your collection or whatever. But when it comes down to it, the legendary equipment, the weapons, none of them are better than the ones that you get besides the Oldhim, besides Winter's Wail. Like, I would not play, what is it, Shiver? Or whatever.
Voltaire.
I would not play Voltaire over
Majestic,
Shiver. Yeah. I would not play Voltaire over Shiver, and I would not play Dawnblade over, or Duskblade over Rosetta Thorn. So, I understand taking it, but just a little thing, if you're trying to like win a draft or something, something crazy is going on and you get that opportunity. you wouldn't be wrong to take another card over that for your deck. Just so if people at home are listening.
Definitely. And the nice thing about Dustblade is they kind of made that decision easy, because I don't even think it's
Right.
worth any money anymore right now. So unless it's, I guess, cold foil, but nobody's really drafting first edition anymore. Anyway,
I actually got to play with one the other day for the first time.
a Dustblade.
Yeah, so we've been playing Blitz in our local game, my local game store, and I played a Briar list, and so did my friend that I just mentioned, Brian Pasoko. He and I have been playing the same Briar list, and I was watching him play against an Oldham player, and he got to bring in his Duskblade in. Boy, was it good! I
Oh,
see
yeah.
why it made sense. Remember we read it, we're like, this card's really good, but watching it play out, I was like, yeah, this card was not okay.
Oh yeah, I mean it in practice it tends to really take over some games.
Mhm.
So yeah, good call on them doing the
Mhm.
pre-band there. Also, one note on Flakeout before we move on to the last card.
Yeah, of course.
It is nice that it is kind of the arrow that you can have your cake and eat it too, because you
Oh,
can give it
absolutely.
dominate and get the +1. So something worth
Mhm.
considering.
That's
And
a
then,
really, really good point, actually.
yeah, and the last card we have is Yellow Vela Flash or Vela Flash. So 1 cost, 4 attack, 3 defense. Has lightning fusion. If it was fused, you may play your next non-attack action card this turn as though it were an instant.
Maybe the cutest card in the set, if you get what I'm trying to say there. It does a lot of like really cool stuff. What do you want it
Mhm.
to? You can reset your action point by making something have instant and then giving it, having that have go again as well. Lots of really cool stuff you can do with this card. I generally probably have this rated a little bit lower than probably the average person, but the card definitely has its uses in the right deck.
Definitely. So, all right. So that's the last card. After seeing the 2 Bramble Sparks, are we more on Weave Earth here?
Nah, I'm just on the red Bramble Spark. I
Yeah.
want to try to high roll, I think, and try to get the, like a deck that just is going to be very, very difficult to deal with.
That is fair. So yeah, that's our crack pack. Let me put these rares over in the giveaway pile. But so let's get to a little bit about you, Tannen.
Ooh,
Now
my
I
favorite
want to,
subject.
yeah.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
So I want to know, where did it all begin before Flesh and Blood? How far back do you go with card games, and or in life in general too, if you want to go that far back?
Sure. So I kind of gave up this point a little earlier. I played, I think, my first games of Magic the Gathering in probably like 94, 95. I can't remember like the exact date, but it was in grade school. I was in about 4th grade. I was about 10 years old, somewhere in there. So on and off since then, I took a pretty long break when I was in like later in grade school into high school. And then right when I started getting, let's see here, right when I started getting out of high school. So I graduated in 2003. So somewhere around like that area, started getting back into Magic a little bit, and then started getting pretty competitive with it. And then I'd be off and on with being super competitive with Magic the Gathering. Like a lot of people my age at the time, and in my skill set, I discovered poker at the time and did that off and on for probably like 15 years, and it was like my major source of income for a very long time as well. But going back to the earlier days, there was that competitive gaming was big for me. I really enjoyed playing. It was like I was pretty big into like Halo 1 and 2 and a couple other things. Played some pretty big tournaments up to an MLG event and stuff. But I gave up on that pretty fast. There was like absolutely no money in it, and the competition was absurd. And so I kind of gave up on that pretty big, pretty fast. And then, back and forth with poker and card games, Hearthstone weaved its way into there. And then, lately it was Flesh and Blood. And couldn't be happier, honestly. I think this game's great.
Oh yeah, it really is. Now I want to actually touch a little bit on poker.
Sure.
How does someone get into poker? I mean, I obviously I mean,
Sure.
it's one of those things where, like, yeah, I mean, just as being alive in this world, we know what poker is, but like,
Mhm.
competitive
Good
poker,
question.
how does someone really get into that?
So that's a really good question. It's a funny story. So we used to draft in person like multiple times a week, but Tuesday night was like the draft that we would get together. It was me and like all the other like really who we consider the best players in our area, and it wasn't like an elitist thing. We were just like really good friends who all pushed each other. Like we always wanted to beat each other. So like that's how you get better at a game, right? You surround yourself with people that are good, and you constantly push each other. And I remember one night we're sitting there and like we're all like strolling in, and we're getting ready to draft. We all have like our sleeves or whatever ready. And one of the guys walks in. I'll never forget this. He walks in, and in his hand, he has something in each hand. He has a deck of cards in his left hand. In his right hand, he had like a grocery bag, like a Walmart bag or whatever, but just full of change. And we're like, what are you doing? And he's like, I want to teach y'all this game. This is him talking. He's like, I want to teach y'all this game that I've been playing online lately and that I've actually been making a lot of money. And we're like, well, you have our attention, like, what is this? And he's like, it's called Texas Hold'em. And I know everyone is like, now like everyone knows what this is, but you have to remember this was if you know your poker history, this was pre Chris Moneymaker. Like he had not won the main event yet, so
Okay.
poker had not become like super mainstream yet, right?
Gotcha.
And so he walks us through the minutiae, he walks us through all the rules, how to play, and we all sit down at a table, and we play a hand or two. And I remember after like the first or second hand, I just like look at him and he's like, what? And I'm like, why would like anyone ever fold pre-flop like before they see the cards come out? And so, we all start talking it over, and then it's like, well, then why would you do this? And you can just see the difference, right? Like immediately we start playing the game, and within the first 2 minutes, we start talking about like in-depth strategy, right? And so like that's not just me, that's everybody at the table. So like I went home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I woke up the next day, went to my local Barnes and Noble because this is early 2000s. The internet hasn't really caught up to poker yet. I buy every poker book that was there, which at the time was like 3. That was like all that were in existence, right? And I just could not put them down. I was just reading them all day. And then my buddy was like, yeah, look, I play on this website because they were available in America at the time. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you should try it out. And the rest they say is history, like, or whatever. I started doing really, really well. Like this is how long ago it was. The most popular game in the world was Limit Hold'em. Not even No Limit. It was Limit Hold'em, where like everything is structured. Go ahead.
What's the difference between limit and
so
no limit?
Right. So everything is the exact same except for how you bet. So like a no limit, you can just bet however much you want at any point in time and it's your turn. Right. I can bet $5, I can bet $100, I can bet $1,000. You know what I mean? Like, you bet, I'm like, oh, well, I'm all in. In this game, every time it's your turn, you either fold, raise, or bet. And everything is done in increments. So like you have to bet the same amount per street. So like the first 2 streets is generally one amount and then doubles on the last 2 streets. So like if you're playing like 5-10, like the first 2 streets you're betting in $5 increments, and then on the next 2 streets you're betting in $10 increments. So like if you bet $10 and I want to raise, I can only make it 20, right?
Gotcha.
So the game is much different. It's a much different game. A lot of people don't like it. I absolutely adored it. It's much closer to, I mean, poker's kind of a solved game anyway, but it's way closer to chess because it's way more, it's just numbers. Like, because, someone can't like raise you off a hand or do like make any kind of crazy moves like that. It's way more analytical in the fact that you have like stuff that like you just have to do. You know what I mean? You just become a robot if you're very good at that game. But then, then Chris Moneymaker won the World Series and everyone started playing No Limit, and yeah,
I guess the rest is history.
I ended up living in Las Vegas for years and years and years after I was already visiting it quite a bit, like during the summers and stuff. And yeah, I probably devoted too much time, and it's why college took me so long to finish and stuff like that. It's like I always joked about I was majoring in poker and magic and minoring in college. So.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, listen, you got through it eventually, right? And I think to quote Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Finds a way. Yeah.
So let's move to casting. So obviously you're a very talented caster, and we're going to get into your casting for Flesh and Blood. But when did casting start for you, and what had you casted prior to Flesh and Blood?
So I'd always been kind of interested in like that part of gaming, right? I'm a little over the hill when it comes to gaming, especially some of the like, if I wanted to go back into first person shooter or something. I'm 37, like I can't keep up with the 16-year-olds anymore. They're less than half my age and stuff like that. So I always kind of like into the broadcast part. I'm a big sports fan. I loved, Sports Center growing up, and I love watching, baseball and football on television, hear them explaining the game. I've always thought that was really, really cool. Mm-hmm. And I have kind of a wealth of knowledge when it comes to these things because I've just been around for so long. So I enjoy sharing that. I like talking, as it's pretty evident for anyone who knows me. And then it was kind of serendipitous. Like I had kind of dabbled here or there, more like I was just in the right place at the right time, and someone would be like, "Hey, do you want to like come into the booth for like a round or something like that?" And I just like absolutely adored it. And then there was a guy named Nathan Zamora. If you know anything about esports, his name is That's Admirable. He's been known for doing a bunch of big games. He actually plays Flesh and Blood and is very, very good. He did really well in Vegas, but hasn't been traveling because of, obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And one day he just like calls me on Skype or something like that, because this is how long ago Skype was the main thing. Discord wasn't even around yet. And we just got to talking, and he's like, "Yeah, have you heard of this game called Hearthstone?" And we're just like, shooting we're sitting there, just talking back and forth. And he kind of convinced me to try the game out. I didn't know this, but he was in the works of starting out a show with some people, and like the director or somebody like that was like listening in, and he was like, "I love y'all's like I love how y'all talk to each other." He's like, I love your chemistry, all that stuff." He's like, "Get Tannon good at the game." And within like a month or two, I had like moved across the country to do all the stuff with them, and just did Hearthstone for like a year straight with them. Did a little bit after that, took some breaks here or there. But then that all comes to this, which is probably, more interesting to everybody at home, is how this started with Flesh and Blood. And, I did some magic and stuff in between, but with the Flesh and Blood thing, it all comes down to the people at Channel Fireball. And big shout out to the Channel Fireball crew. Easiest people I've ever had to work with, most creative crew I've ever had to work with. They roll with the punches better than like hands down, just the most professional and most fun group. I have nothing against anybody else, but I mean these people are pure professionals. They're amazing.
It sounds like they get it, right?
Oh yeah, they get it. Yeah, like because people at home, if you have any complaints or whatever, just remember they had never seen or played this game before we like started doing these shows. And I think they did a bang up job and what goes on behind the scenes, you don't get to see everything. Like especially our first show in Vegas, like some of our stuff didn't even show up, so we're kind of like bare bonesing the show as much as we could. But I just get this message one day out of the blue from a guy named Jeff Foster, who is, I just call him like our director. He's pretty much like he's like the guy in charge. You know what I mean? He makes sure everything's running. He's the one with like the final say in a lot of things, even though, it's not like, I don't think of him as like a boss, but I do. Do you get what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so he just messaged me one day and he's like, "Hey, have you ever played Flesh and Blood?" And I was like, "No, but a lot of my friends have, and I've only heard ridiculously good things. And there's a couple guys at my LGS who are like adamant about playing this game, and one of them had been like, 'You need to play it, you're gonna love it. You need to play it, you're gonna love it.'" And so I was like, "No, I haven't played it. Why? What's up?" This isn't a random question from him. He's not the kind of person to do that. And he's like, "Well, hey, we have these events coming up, and we need somebody for Las Vegas." And he's like, his quote was, "I've had you in my back pocket." Like, he's always thought of me for a job. He's like, "I've had you in my back pocket for a job like this, but nothing has ever really, come up that I wanted you, like you were good for. But this is coming up." And he goes, "It's in like 2.5 weeks." I had about 2.5 weeks. And he's like, "Do you think you can learn the game by then and get ready for it?" I was like, "Yeah, how hard could it be? Like, like I'm really good at, magic and all these other games. How hard could this be?" Well, fast forward, it's very difficult, especially because I didn't realize you could only play the game in person. I didn't even know that yet. I'd never really taken time. So in a mad scramble, I tried to learn the game as quickly as possible. That got interrupted quite a bit. I got hit by a hurricane. I live in South Louisiana, and we got decimated by a hurricane. So I was out of power for about a week. So, going into Vegas, I had barely played the game, but I had looked at it a lot and like played it in my head. They sent me some blitz decks, so I'd kind of like gone through the game, just kind of like understand turn by turn. But the game is amazingly complex. It was very difficult, but
it really is. Now
yeah.
let's set the scene for you showing up at Vegas, right? They gave you 2.5 weeks, as you just said. You got hit by a hurricane. You're probably playing Flesh and Blood by candlelight, maybe to learn it.
Oh no, 100% I did. 100% I actually did that at one point.
I used to live in South Florida. I've lived through quite a few hurricanes, and there was a lot of candlelight board games going on when I was a kid. So I have to imagine. I mean, this is I think it sounds like it's a testament to even more adversity this game has had to overcome in this year of 2021. But so yeah, you show up in Vegas. Tell us a little bit about the Vegas experience.
The Vegas experience was great, right? Like, what a location first to pick. Just really smart an idea to do it in Vegas. Like, if you're gonna do anything on the West Coast, just choose Vegas. It's where to go. I was nervous in a good way, right? I knew that I would do part of the job well, right? Like the host part, I'm like, I'm gonna get this. I can do this. Like I'm just gonna try to carry that part as hard as I possibly can. And then my job was to make the other two guys. By the way, shout out to Red Zone Rogue and Armada who were there for me and really made me look a lot and sound a lot better than I was. They did a lot of heavy carrying that
Oh
weekend.
yeah, great
Um,
guys. I had Red
mhm.
Zone Rogue on. Hope to get DM. Obviously, we got you. We got the Holy Trinity going. But yeah, go on.
I'll put the word in for you. Put a word in for you. But I know he's really busy. He's like a teacher, has like 3 kids and stuff. I don't know how the guy makes time. He does like all of his own stuff for
Oh
for
my
YouTube
god.
and stuff. I have so much respect for him. Um, and none for Red Zone. Obviously, I have some for Red Zone. It just sounded so weird. Anyway,
Yeah.
so getting to Vegas, I was very nervous. It was the first time I'd really been out of my house in like a year and a half. You know what I mean? Like I had been, very conscious about what was going on in the world. We were all like super safe. Not to get into that too much.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away, honestly. There was 905 people for the Friday event, the world premiere of Tales of Aria. And it was the first time I had like really played Flesh and Blood. I sat down and I made myself play all the rounds just to kind of like, get the feel for it and learn. Had a lot of fun. A lot of people were asking me, they're like, "What are you playing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm on the mic." And they're like, "Oh, cool. Who are you?" And I'm like, "Nobody. Don't worry about it." Kind of thing. And I was like, because at the time I wasn't even sure I was gonna, get a second chance. Like they had told me like, "Hey, you can do Vegas, and then we'll see how it goes." I think they wanted to like make sure, if I really bombed, they could just be like, let's pivot and go to someone else. Let's not like commit to Tannon too soon, which is completely understandable, obviously, you know. And
Yeah. But also, you knocked it out of the park. So,
I
obviously
appreciate that.
they put the chips on the right bet as it were. So
Yeah, really good analogy there with us being in Vegas. I tried to make a joke during the weekend, never could get it to be organic. Where Tales of Aria, one of my favorite properties in Las Vegas, is the Aria, which is like right across the street from where we were. But anyway, yeah, before the weekend was even over, they were like, "Can you do any of the other shows?" And I was like, "I'll do all of them." Like I just really wanted to be involved in something from the beginning.
oh
Like I
yeah.
know this isn't the first events, but let's be real, this was an actual beginning. This
Hmm.
was like the start of legitimacy. And that was a big thing. Me, Red Zone, and Armada sat down on Friday, and again, on Saturday, and just kind of talked beforehand. I'm like, guys, we have an opportunity here. We're the first people to do this. The way we talk about this game, the verbiage we use, stuff like that, is going to resonate from here till the end of the game. Because like we're going to be setting a tone, and this is a big moment for us. And I wasn't trying to make them nervous or anything, but I just wanted them to understand the gravity of the situation, which I'm sure they did. They didn't
Hmm.
need me to like hold their hand that way, but it was more like I just kind of wanted to call attention to how lucky we were, and honestly, just how humbled I was to be the person picked for this, and to continue to be picked for it, and hopefully continue to be picked for it, next year.
Yeah, and absolutely. So like Vegas really set the stage for the rest of the year, right? So
Mhm.
it was I got into the game around when it was announced, or at least the organized play plan was announced. I think in July, and I imagine that's when they kind of reached out to you, when they started getting the cogs going for these events.
I mean, I got reached out to right before Vegas. That was the
Oh
first
yeah,
time.
2.5 weeks.
No,
Yeah,
that's yeah, no, that's completely
yeah,
fine. They might have talked, they might have brought my name up, as an
Mhm.
idea for it, but I think everything happened very fast
Yeah.
with everything. So, I had already made plans before they called it to like at least look at the game. I like walked over, watched some people play it. I was like, I don't know if I want to like, devote that much time, at my age, learning a new game because I'm one of those people, I avoid learning new games because I am super obsessive and I want to be very good at everything that I do. So if I pick up something else, I'll just never leave my house, like ever.
Yeah.
Like it'll dominate everything I do for like the next few weeks or months or years, depending on how much I like it. So I am hesitant about joining into new things when it comes to, this kind of depth of thing.
So
So,
it's safe to say that this is a year's hobby,
oh
Flesh and
yeah.
Blood.
Oh yeah. I find I like this game more and more and more every
uh,
time I'm into it. So,
oh yeah. So you sat down with Red Zone, you sat down with DM that Friday, or like, hey, listen, we're about to be about part of something huge. And
mhm.
in reality, this is going to be historic for Flesh and Blood as we look back, years down the road. And obviously, 2021 and Vegas itself was like important in terms of kind of the success of the game, the viability for its future, the public impression, which going into Vegas, or even, you know, like in Flesh and Blood's early days, like people are like, oh, do people even play this? Is this a collector's game? Is that all it is?
Dead game, yeah, all the jokes, yeah.
Yeah. And Vegas really turned that around. And I mean, when you when you saw the 905 people for the event on Friday, what was the feelings in the coverage team, you know, and your team there at Vegas? Like, you know, was it like, wow, this is really happening?
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away because 905 people played. There was probably a few hundred people there not playing. You know, there's like cosplayers, people who just, you know, enjoyed the game, wanted to be around it, playing side events. You know, it felt like a big event, right? You know, this felt like a convention. There was just a ton of people there. The energy in the room was palpable. Like, I definitely saw people, I don't want to say like you saw anybody like literally weeping, but you saw people like very happy. Even with the mask on, you could tell, you know, you could see it in their eyes that they're just grinning from ear to ear. You know, your eyes are a little wet. You know, I'm talking about, you know, when you get like really into something and really happy, like, you know, there's tears in their eyes, but not to the point of crying, but just the point of being happy. And it was very infectious because, like, I'm not gonna lie, like going in, you know, this was a job. You know, this was like a job for me. I didn't want to screw it up. But at the same time, you know, I hadn't fallen in love with Flesh and Blood yet. I was just still in the early stages of learning, like doing as much as I can to make sure I can do my job, if that makes sense. You know, like I hadn't really, you know, fallen in love with the game yet. I hadn't had a chance to, you know, to really get into it. So that was my first taste of like what that looked like and what that felt like and what it sounded like. You know, and this is what I expected. You know, I was like, I think they're going to knock it out of the park this event, and they did, thankfully.
Now, I mean, you say you hadn't fallen in love with the game yet. Now, was this a huge push into that love for the game that you clearly have now?
Yeah, this dipped my toes into it, and then the next couple callings, I just dove head first. So Vegas was nerve-wracking. Like, Vegas was very difficult. I lost some sleep over it, probably got some gray hair over it, because think about not having ever played this game, and you have to call a classic constructed event.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, where so many different cards are going to be played.
Yeah, like very good example. There's one round where I'm sitting with Red Zone Rogue, and I can't even remember the heroes, but some heroes come up. And in one of them, one of them was a hero. I'm like, I'm familiar with this one. I know cards, but one of them was one of the heroes that I didn't expect to be represented very highly, like under 5% of the tournament. So I knew practically 0 cards in the deck, and I panicked because, you know, 1 minute before the round, they're like, hey, we have this matchup come up. And I'm already in the booth with the headset on. And I look at Red Zone, and I'm like, I don't know anything about this deck. And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. It's like my favorite hero. So I was like, oh, thank God. You know, like that really saved me. But like, you know, going in, you could tell I had really put some time in learning like Chain because I knew it was going to be represented. I didn't realize how like it was going to be even to that level, but I knew it was the best deck. So I learned that as much as possible. So I could at least help out as much as possible. But some of that naivete, some of that like just not knowing, I think it actually helps the broadcast in some ways because I'm just going to ask questions. You know, and I don't mind sounding quote unquote stupid because like, hey, that's kind of my job, right? Like I'm supposed to ask questions and bring the viewer in and kind of, I don't like when people say dumb it down because it has like a negative connotation, but just like bring it down to a level for everyone to enjoy. And so like, you know, I'm like, you know, hey, like, why are they doing this? Or like, what you said that's a good card. Like, why is that important in this matchup? Like, why is it important that they have these cards that have 6 power against a Prism deck? Because people at home might not get that. You know, they might not have played against Prism or they don't realize how Phantasm works. You know, like little things like that.
Definitely.
You know, and that was my job. And so, go ahead.
Yeah. And it makes your broadcasting partner look good too, because they get to answer those questions. Yeah. And it really gets a nice back and forth going. Now, flashing forward to Nationals, this had to have been super exciting, right? You know, first Nationals event, huge, and you get to cast it, obviously, as you had done the whole season. But your friend Tarek took it down. I mean, how do you manage that kind of emotion when you're casting and your buddy's there on camera?
Oh, absolutely. So that weekend was really crazy, and we can get into the whole story, but I'll definitely answer this question right away. So Tarek and I go way back. We've competed against each other quite a bit in Magic the Gathering. In fact, it's actually a joke that was going on for a while. So Tarek's Canadian, which a lot of people don't know. He's from Canada. He's lived in America for quite a while now, but he's originally from Canada. And it was a joke for this long time because I was known in Magic for finishing second. Like I had a year where I was probably like I don't want to say like the most dominant, but I had like the highest percentage of like top eighting big events in
Mhm.
Magic, right? Like I top eighted like something like 40 something percent of the events I played in. And we're talking, over 1,000 people at these events. Like I was just running out of my mind. I was running so good. My decks were always like the right decks and blah, 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 blah. But I would just keep losing in the finals. And it was a joke that like, I'm just never going to win a trophy. And he was known for the same thing in like Canada, right? Which obviously he's broke the streak since.
Yeah, a
Unfortunately,
little
I have
bit.
not. But yeah, it was really nice to watch that because, you know, um, I was there in Dallas when he finished a heartbreaking ninth, and I mentioned him on coverage because he was involved in a pod that was like him, Brendan Patrick, and like I think Rob Seigel or somebody else that was very good. We're all in this pod, and I was like, this is like the pod of death. Like you didn't want to be in this one. You want to kind of make it up. And he ended up finishing a heartbreaking ninth place, right?
Mhm.
And when the tournament was over, we like rode to the airport together, and I was like, I'll see you in Cincinnati. And he's like, nah, I don't think so. And so I was like, if you don't book a ticket, I will book one for you. So he ends up booking one, finishes second in Cincinnati, and then comes to nationals, and as you said, ends up winning it. And yeah, it was awesome to watch. It was difficult in the booth, never from the fact that I was like nervous for my friend. Like obviously I wanted him to win, but I think you get this, and anyone who's done a job like this, it's you get into work mode. Like when I
Mhm.
sit down, when I put the headset on, I'm almost a different me. Like I'm
Yeah.
just like super focused on what I'm doing, and so I'm not thinking that, oh, that's Tarek, about to like win this. But I didn't cast the finals. We'll get to why a lot about that in a minute. But I didn't cast the finals, so I'm just sitting there watching. There's a photo, you can find this on Twitter, of all of us, of us behind the scenes, and it's I think it was Red Zone Rogue and Matt Rogers were casting the finals, but all of the casters were all just bundled right there, right off camera watching.
Mhm.
And they joked about it that I was very distracting to them because I got to watch it as a fan, and obviously I'm rooting for Tarek. And when he wins, I just like popped off, like I went crazy. And you couldn't see this, but he comes behind, to do the interview, and I just like bear hug him and pick him up off the ground. I'm just so happy and elated for him because I know how hard he worked for it, and how much him actually creating that Briar deck that took the world by storm and was by far the best deck. It's not often that you see someone do that, like break a format, with this deck, really do that and then actually get fully rewarded for it too. Like someone else is usually the person who gets to reap the full benefit of it, right?
Oh yeah.
You
Eh,
saw that with the other nationals, someone going 15-0 with his deck, that kind of thing, because it got leaked a little early and stuff like that. So it was nice to see him actually get the fruits of his own labor too.
yeah, it was pretty incredible, and actually something you mentioned about the Dallas, the ninth. I was watching that coverage. I remember specifically you mentioning Tarek, and you were saying is a buddy of yours, and you saying that it was the pot of death. And it was funny. I was like, and I think we got to watch some of his games on that were featured, and I mean he was an incredible player. And I specifically wrote down his name because I was like, I think this guy's gonna be really good, and I was rooting for him to make top eight. Obviously, he didn't, and then the Cincinnati, obviously hit getting second. I was like, oh, is the streak going to continue? And yeah, no, absolutely amazing. I can't imagine, even like being off to the side. Like I bet you were so distracting for Red
Oh
Zone.
yeah. They gave me a hard time about it, but that was a tough weekend for me, and this is kind of what I was alluding to. What a lot of people don't know, and if you go back and you watch that coverage, or you watch it at home and you watch a lot, you may have noticed you didn't see a lot of me
Mhm.
that weekend. Like I did some interviews on the side, but I wasn't in the booth a ton. I was actually working out on the floor quite a bit. I was like taking pictures, helping out where I could, because I was struggling mightily that weekend coming in, and I wasn't sick. So like we weren't concerned about COVID or anything like
Mhm.
that, we had gotten negatives and stuff, but I had done something to my throat. I found out later that I may have had bronchitis, but like I also like strained a vocal cord
Oh
going
no.
into that week because, we did 3 weekends out of 4 were events for Flesh and Blood. And while this was my job, I'm decent at talking. People don't realize how much it takes out of you to do an event like that. Like generally Mondays on the day after these weekends, I don't want to talk. My throat is like destroyed. My voice is gone. Stuff like that. Like you're just tired, right? I had all that going on, and then if you don't know, if you follow me on Twitter, you probably have known just from seeing my stuff. I'm like the biggest Atlanta Braves fan in the entire world. Like have been
Yeah.
since I was a child. It's my favorite thing ever. Like I'm a diehard Braves fan, and they won the World Series this year for the first time since I think it was like 97, 90, 96. And so it's been 20 years, 25 years since they've won one. And I actually went to some World Series games, like, and this is the week in between. So there was 2 weekends in a row we had a calling, we had a week off, then we had nationals. And so that week that we were off was all of that going on. And so, I'm flying from here to there to go watch games. I'm driving across the country to go watch games. I'm at my house watching all of them, just yelling and going crazy because, I'm a madman when it comes to this stuff, and my voice just couldn't take it. And I got through the weekend as much as I possibly could. Thankfully, there was hot tea and honey on demand. I was joking with some people on the floor. I don't remember if it was you, but I definitely joked with some people that I knew that I'd seen around a lot of events. I was averaging about 7 cups of tea a day.
Oh my God.
And the little squeezable honey things, I was going through about half of that thing of a day, just so I can make it through, 30 to 45 minutes on camera without dying. And, without my voice just going completely. And if it sounded pretty good on camera overall, it was way worse than you could imagine. I'm gonna paint a mental picture for people about like what goes on for casting behind the scenes, so they can understand what I'm talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's way harder than people think it is. So anyone in Twitch chat who like gives us a hard time, you're entitled to your own opinion. It's a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah.
And like here's a good example of what I'm doing when I'm casting. So I'm sitting there, right, and I have the person next to me that I'm having a conversation with. And generally, I'm the person like leading things, right? I'm like the host role when I'm sitting there. I'm play-by-play,
Mm-hmm.
so I have to keep up with what's going on and kind of move the conversation along. So I've got that going on. So I'm talking to them, right? So like they're usually to my left. In front of me is a giant television, right? Like some like 70, 80-inch television that we're watching the stream. So we see what y'all see, right? So that can be distracting too. When the camera's on us, I can see myself in my peripheral vision, but I'm trying to look at the camera, right? So all that's going on. So I'm talking to them. I'm watching that. I can see everyone that's like behind the scenes as well. So all that's going on. We have in our headsets, we also can hear anyone who's like working backstage. They can talk in our ears while it's going on. So that happens a lot. Like they're telling us, hey, this game's going to end in a minute or two. Like we're going to come back to the booth in about 30 seconds, things like that. So that's going on while we're talking, and you have to just kind of continue to have a conversation while that's going on. So sometimes you see us have like an awkward pause for half a second, or, someone stutters. That's usually what it is. Someone's talking in their ear, and sometimes it just messes with you. So all that's going on. I have an iPad sitting to my right where I'm trying to pull cards up on the stream as well. If we talk about a card, I can. We don't always get to it as quickly as we want to, but hey, we're talking about this card. It's really important in the matchup. Like he really wants to draw, this card. I can go and find it, on the thing, click some stuff and pull it up on the screen. So all that's going on, and you have a mute button, so you can mute yourself. And I had to use that mute button so much during Orlando because I was, coughing or having a fit, during a lot of it. And my co-casters like really, really stepped up that weekend, and I was just so thankful to them after the event of just actually getting me through. I think after the event, so that was what I've been talking so much. Sorry. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yes, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm making up for all the talking I didn't do at that event. So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think after that, when I got home Sunday night, I didn't speak again besides like one sentence or two. I don't think I spoke again until Thursday or Friday. Like I literally just didn't speak for like 4 days.
Wow. I do remember you on Twitter mentioning that. Now if I'm remembering correctly, Red Zone Rogue was there as a player, and they probably, because of this, they probably asked him to do some coverage, and yes. Everybody stepped up. But honestly, I mean, as someone, I mean, I was there in Orlando. I was just participating in the calling. I didn't do nationals or anything like that. I went over a few times to look at the top tables, but more stayed to the other side of the convention center. But I will say, you presented yourself in a way that did not seem like you were struggling as much, and I think that's the true side of a professional. Now, one small thing, I had gone over there and watched maybe the end of one of Tarek's games, and I believe there was I think he was playing against Joe Collin, and it was he might have been Unchained, and obviously against Breyer. There was like almost like a brief moment where people were confused in terms of like he conceded but he didn't. Were you next to him for that? I don't remember.
Yeah, I was like over the shoulder of Tarek when it happened. I don't want to get into the details of that because it made for like really bad optics, and we kind of cut some of it out off of the broadcast. We talked about it, but we kind of cut some of it off the broadcast just because we didn't want Twitch chat to go nuts with it, especially with what happened the weekend before. with everything. It was just it was kind of a nightmare scenario that I think we handled really well from the production side, and like nothing was kept from anyone. We the result was correctly whatever. It was also like I don't want to say anything about like the players because it was a snafu on like all parts. Like everyone was to blame. One of those crazy moments that only comes up in games in high pressure situations. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't think but there was no foul play
Yeah,
there.
of course.
It was just like it was interesting because we were all there. It was like, oh, what's going on? Like, because like we saw the concession and then we're like, huh. And then like everybody's like walking over. We're like, but it all ended up being all's well that ends well as it is. But I wanted to see if there was anything that we all missed from just watching. But I'm sure
y'all didn't really miss anything. It seems like you might have, but not at all. It was just we cut out like the dead air. And we try to do that. Like you might see sometimes if a judge call happens when we're on a game, we come back to the booth if we can.
Gotcha.
Because it's not good television, right? Yeah. Just to call it whatever it is. It's not good television. You just sit there and see the player's hands gesturing wildly as they're trying to explain something. And then we don't know what's going on. Generally, we don't know what's going on in the booth if it's a recorded match, like if it's the second one that we're showing that round, because, all the matches happen simultaneously, but we sometimes show the backup match. That's already, we're watching a recording, but we're seeing it live. But this is one of the times when like your skill has to really come in because, like we'll be sitting there doing the match and then in my ear, I'm like, all right, we're going to have a 5-minute judge call coming up. Here's what's happening. We're going to cut out 4.5 minutes of the judge call.
Gotcha.
So I have to make it look seamless. Like, hey, this is the judge call. This is what happened. I'm getting a report right now. This is how it got, resolved, kind of thing.
It does.
Or sometimes go ahead.
Oh yeah, it does remind me almost of. Like in terms of what the caster had to do in that situation, it reminds me of. I forget which Super Bowl it was. It was I think the Ravens against the 49ers when the power went out, and I just remember the broadcasters. I mean, eventually they just started plugging that show Broke Girls, Two Broke Girls, like over and over again.
So. I don't know if they have the same like quote unquote rules as we do, but like there's some stuff, and I especially tell people this like. The first times they're in a booth, I always tell them, don't worry, I'm going to hold your hand the whole time. Like not literally, but I'm going to, I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to make you sound great. Don't worry. I got you. But like, there's certain rules that like, I like to follow. And, I kind of just hit on one where if something like that's going on with a judge call, I really don't think we should be making any kind of guesses at what's going on or saying anything to that matter because A, we don't know exactly what's going on. B, we're not judges. And C, we can influence what's going on at home in the way that people, think and intake what's going on. And that's not our job. So generally we'll just come back and I'll just bring up some random subject or I'll start talking about the match or something like that, right? And then another one is if the stream ever goes down or it comes back to us, something's going on, it's called vamping. You're supposed to just vamp. You're supposed to just talk, right? And I think this is one main reason I get hired. Is you're just supposed to talk about anything, and I'm like, even if we don't know if we're live or not, we've had that happen where like the CPU died, and we just kept casting for like 5 minutes, and then they were like, all right, you're officially not on air. They're like, we didn't know yet, but they're like, you officially can stop.
Oh, wow.
But like, you should just keep going, like because you don't want dead air, and you don't want it to come back to the booth and have us just be like, oh, we don't know what's going on, kind of thing. Like it just makes for bad television. So anytime you're watching and you're like, man, these casters are talking a lot. Let's get to the game. It's not our fault. we're doing what we can,
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so Nationals obviously was huge. Great success for your buddy. It was kind of the close to the organized play for 2021. Right. And looking back on the year, is it clear? It is clear that Flesh and Blood really turned a big corner. Now, I was, I knew you're a Braves fan. I was going to try to put more baseball analogies in. I was going to say like July, maybe when they announced organized play. That was like, oh, okay, Flesh and Blood's coming out of the All-Star game, and they're going to.
I like it. I like it.
But based on your experience with the game, what you saw firsthand, which you had firsthand more than most, have these past 6 months really set Flesh and Blood up for a really strong future?
The sky and COVID is the limit. Is how I want to say this. I'm a little worried with what's going on in the last week or two with Omicron. Getting extremely big. We're seeing some stuff kind of peel back. Some of the the liberties that we were getting back, peeled back quite a bit here. Maybe that wasn't the right word to use there, and that's going to trigger some people. But you get what I'm saying. So we'll see what happens. I know a tiny bit more than the average person, but not much.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say certain things, but y'all might hear some cool news soon. That's kind of a there we go. I'll give y'all that. I can probably say that much. Hopefully, I don't get in trouble, but y'all might find out some cool stuff soon. I won't say anything in particular
A
or whatever.
nice
So
Fresh and Buds exclusive, my first.
there you go. There you go. And so I think it's going to be a big year. Is if we're allowed to have a big year. If you get what I'm saying there. If we can travel, if we can do everything, maybe there's some concessions we're going to have to make, but. I saw this stat the other day. It was TCG Player, which is like this is not a plug for TCG Player. There's Channel Fireball Marketplace and stuff like that. Those are all great. But TCG Player put out a stat where it was like, the biggest growths in games that year. And it was like the second place game had like a pretty big jump. It had like a 30 to 50% jump, or maybe 100 to 200, 300% jump. I don't remember the exact number, and I forgot what game it was. But Flesh and Blood was the number one like growth game for the year, and it was up over 3,000%.
I saw that
in transactions on the site.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible. It blew me away. I think it's like, obviously, everything points to this game being bigger this year. And with James White behind it, with LSS the way they are, like, it's going to take a lot to make it not successful. And I mean, some stuff is stacked against it with, COVID and stuff going on. But I think if it wasn't for that, like if this was 2018, I think this game would be gigantic already. Like I think it would just be huge and stuff. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm very, very optimistic though. Very optimistic. And I could not ask to be in a better position, going forward. Real quick, I got a funny anecdote about the exclusive. So you made me think about this. In Cincinnati, one of the limited ones, day 2 was a really funny day for me. A lot of crazy stuff went on. So I wake up to my phone like buzzing like crazy, and I'm like, "What the hell?" And I see that I'm getting a phone call. I just answered immediately. I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" Or whatever. And it was either Rob. I think it was Rob Seigel. It was like It was one of the guys I was doing coverage with. He's like, "Hey man, where you at?" And I was like, "I'm in my room." He's like, "Bro, we're live in like 25 minutes, and my alarm had just not gone off." Yeah. So I jump in the shower, get dressed, and get to the site literally as quick as possible. So like I am sprinting through the site. There's people that joke about it. They're like, they saw me sprint to the site. I like slide into the booth, put my headset on. I'm like, "Welcome back to Cincinnati." I literally got in the booth with like 30 seconds to spare or whatever. But the whole time that's going on, like while I'm riding in my Uber to the site, I look at my phone and I have some messages on Twitter, some DMs, right? And one of them's from James White. And usually, he sends me a little like, "Hey, good job this weekend," blah, blah, blah. But I see that I have like 6 paragraphs missed from him. And I'm like, "Oh no." I'm like, "Did I do something that I say?" Like there's always that like imposter syndrome, that like creeps in. And it was just like, "Hey, no, here's like a world exclusive for you to like talk about or whatever, blah, blah, blah." And it's like, if you have time, like if, he was so polite about it, like just such a sweetheart about it. He's like, if you find a spot to put it into coverage, if you think you can, manage it here, you can tell. I'm like, of course I'm going to find a spot for it. Like, it was just so funny because like, it was that I get there and like, "Oh, by the way, we're covering the draft." I had no idea we were doing that. And I got like super excited. So it was just a crazy, crazy day from start to finish.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember actually I was talking to our buddy of the show, Garbage Andy, about that as well. Yeah, and that's super exciting. I mean, and to your point about with James White behind it, he truly seems to really get it, and I especially enjoyed his interview with Red Zone Rogue, and it really kind of nailed it home for me anyway, in terms of like, wow, I mean, this is something special. And you're right. If it was 2018, it would have been huge. Like, I mean,
I would follow that man. Yeah, I would follow that man anywhere. Like, he just inspires that out of you.
He really does, and he cares, and that shows. And it's kind of a rule for anything. If you care about what you're doing, I think people see that, and yeah, it is incredible. Now, personally, down the road, I think we will look back on 2021 as like a huge success, both as like from a product and an organized play standpoint. Obviously we talked about how much we love Tales of Aria. I mean, that was such a knockout. Like even if like the organized play stuff didn't happen, I would still love Tales of Aria. Now, I mean, and then with the callings and nationals being such a success as well, there's no doubt that 2021 is the year that made Flesh and Blood. So I have to say, there's no denying that your involvement has contributed to some of the success of the latter. You are part of Flesh and Blood's history. Is that something that you know have you even thought about that? Like you must. I mean, I would imagine you're very proud to be part of that.
Oh, absolutely. I think proud and humbled are the two words that come to mind first. I get like a grin on my face whenever this subject comes up because I'm just like very lucky, because I was very much an outsider when I came in, and now I feel like I'm like part of it. And yeah, like I feel like I'm there, but I don't want to get complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to keep doing as well as I can. And I think people saw that. If you watched all the events, I think you could tell that I was getting better at my job every single event going down the line. I became more comfortable with the game, became more knowledgeable. Just, you know what I mean? Like I really kind of like, I hate talking about myself this way, but like I kind of like came into my own a little bit, maybe even
Yeah.
came out of my shell a little bit because the first, one or two of them, I'm just trying not to mess up as much as possible. You know what I mean? You're a little more reserved. You're trying to be proper. You're trying to do the work. And then you can see little bits and pieces of me come out and then more and more as we go. And I'm really looking forward to next year if I'm a part of it. Nothing is set in stone yet. I'm assuming, and I'm hoping I'm not assuming incorrectly. But to kind of talk about like next year, what's going to go on. I want to be a part of it. I would love to be a part of it. I really hope I am. I think the true measure of it, and if we get this to do these things again, like I said, COVID is rearing its ugly head again. It is something that's looming over us. But
Yeah.
if everything happens at least to the effect that it did this year that we're having, where like we get to have events as long as we're like as careful as possible in person, I think it's all going to hinge on that Pro Tour, that first Pro Tour.
Absolutely.
I think that's going to be the big first moment where it's like we have arrived. This is it, and I'm hoping. Even if I'm involved or not, I'm hoping it's just done with a bang up job, and I know it will be if it's the Channel Fireball crew. They're utterly amazing. They have a ton of experience doing this kind of thing and making it feel big. And I already have some ideas of how we're going to make it a little bit, a little different. Like you're not going to, it's not going to be like drastically different. You know what I mean? Like, the way we do this, but just little things that make it feel bigger, make it feel grand. Like, so you get the gravitas of the moment.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you learned something from each event, right? It's like, oh, well, if we had just done that different, we'll look to the next time. So, yeah, it is very exciting. I think 2022 is going to be huge. And I personally, I hope you're involved with it as much as you want to be. And I think it's exciting. And I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure. You've been an awesome guy and easy to work with. I want two things from you right now.
Sure.
I want you to plug anything that you need to plug.
Sure.
At all. And then I want you to talk. I always like to talk a little bit about food at the end of every podcast. I want you to tell me like some food, whether it's something you eat locally or maybe you grew up eating that you just want to talk about.
Sure, absolutely. I actually love food, but just for the plug for myself, you can just follow me on Twitter at the Tannon Grace. It's really easy to follow in there, the Tannon Grace, and that's generally where all the cool stuff goes on because I'm a cool guy. No. If it's baseball season going on, I talk a lot about baseball, but I'll talk a decent bit about gaming and stuff on there. Also, you want to make sure you're following me if you're not within about a month. I'm going to be doing my preview card, and I get to see it, and in probably about 2 weeks. I'm super excited about that. And then I'm going to have to somehow not reveal it for about 10 days because I have to like, just, hey, you're going to see the card on this date and then your data releases, and talk about it here. So somehow I'm going to be trying not to lose my mind and wanting to, share my card for about those 10 days. But make sure you follow me to see that and any other cool stuff that's going on. And, I'll be talking a lot about Flesh and Blood over the next year when, all the stuff and all the information of it comes out. As for food, how do you want to do this? What's the best thing you ate in the last week?
The best thing I ate the last week? Oh man, I can't even. I mean, so I'm from the Northeast. I live in Jersey, so we got a lot of good Italian food. I had this eggplant parm.
I love pasta.
Hoagie that was like just out of.
Whoa! Did you say hoagie?
Yeah.
Eggplant parm hoagie?
Yeah,
okay.
Like eggplant parm hero sub, whatever. I mean,
Sure.
like I spent a lot of time in Philadelphia, so hoagie just slips out of my mouth. So
it's not filling enough. There's not enough carbs in it. We're gonna have to slap it between two giant slices of bread. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, and it was the bomb.com, and something else I really enjoy is pork, egg, and cheese, which is a New Jersey thing, which is so good.
I like I like pork quite a bit. I started eating meat again over the last year, and so like I was gonna say I enjoy pork. I've been trying to like take care of myself better over the last few years, and I go through phases of doing a really good job and a really bad job, and part of that is diet. So a lot of what I eat is pretty boring overall, but I do like spice it up as much as I can with literal as many spices as I can put on the stuff. Like right now when we're done eating this, I told you I was working out before this. When we get done, I'm going to eat chicken and vegetables. Just the
Yeah.
the bread and butter of that kind of thing. But I do have like my cheat meals. But I don't eat fast food very often, but my big thing lately for cheat meals is I've just been crushing Popeyes. I don't know if do y'all have
Oh,
Popeyes up in
yeah, we
New
have a few
Jersey?
Popeyes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I go ahead.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Is it like I've had maybe it once because I don't eat a lot of
Oh, I
fast
love
food
it.
either.
Yeah.
But I guess I mean they do say Popeyes really takes the cake compared to the other fried chicken.
Yeah, it's the best
But
one, but yeah, it's the best one by far. It's that or like I'm very sensitive to dairy, so I have to take something ahead of time, but I'll just eat like an entire pizza in one sitting. Or I actually like pasta quite a bit, and for anyone who's seen me, I'm a pretty skinny guy overall, so like I do get to like pasta is actually good for me as long as I don't overdo it. So like there's certain days of the week I'll eat pasta for breakfast because I need that carbo load for the day to like go lift some weights or whatever. And then I've
go
been
for a
really obs
marathon run.
well, I don't do cardio that much anymore. Like my knees and my back can't really take it anymore. I was a track runner for a really long time, and my knees and back are just shot. My feet are shot from doing that. But also like I'm trying to like add a little bit of substance to myself. I'm
Gotcha.
one of the people. I have the reverse problem. I'm sure if anybody's is conscious of their weight, they hate people like me that are like, yeah, I just can't put weight on.
Yeah.
Like or, I'll go eat a cheat meal. I'll come home and I lost 2 pounds,
Oh my.
kind of person.
I
And
yeah, I'm the opposite, man. Actually the podcast is over. I'm mad. No, I was kidding.
yeah, sure. No, so like yeah, there's that. I've been super obsessed with these cookies lately because it's the holidays and like I like sweets during the holidays. I've dealt way too much of a sweet tooth, but we did speak about Vegas on this, and I want to talk about Vegas for a second because it has some of my favorite meals in the world. There was a meal there that I eat almost every single time I'm there, and whether I was not eating meat or not, I would eat this meal and it has meat in it. And it's at a place called Lotus of Siam
Mhm.
that a little bit off the strip in Las Vegas. Best Thai food in the world outside of Thailand. And there's a dish in there. It's called crispy duck Penang, and it's like
Ooh.
one of my favorite dishes in the world. It's very simple, but it's amazing. And then here's a cool story. I didn't tell this on social media or whatever, but it happened while we were in Vegas for the first calling.
Mhm.
I'm hanging out with one of my friends, Jonathan Job, who's there, and Job's kind of he's a known person in that city. He and I lived there for he's lived there for he lived there for well over a decade. He has some good friends. He can get some strings pulled. So one of the days we were there, he's like, "Hey, do you want to just get like a really good meal tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, like whatever." So it was only like three of us, I think. A couple people bailed at the last minute, but we went to Amalfi, which is Bobby Flay's new restaurant, right? And you have to have a reservation. Or well, he pulled some strings. We got a reservation. Our entire meal got comped. I don't want to tell you how
Oh,
expensive
wow.
the meal for three people was, but our meal got comped. It was the best meal. It was easily a top three meal of my life, if not the best meal of my life. And it was one of those ones where like you order like seven different things, multiple desserts, tried out everything. Everything was literally perfect or beyond perfect. It set new expectations. It kind of ruins you for other food. But the crazy part about the story is the food is going to be really, really good when they sit you down, right? And I sit down at my table. I see everybody kind of like looking in my direction, but like looking past me. I'm like, what's going on? I look over my shoulder, and Gordon Ramsay was just sitting at the table next to us.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like literally, like just from the TV. People are always like bigger or smaller than you expect. He looks about right.
Oh,
Like, he
really?
looks
Yeah.
he looks about the same. But just Gordon Ramsay just chilling, like trying out some food. I was like, all right, this place is gonna be so good. But that was really really good. And so um, I always look forward to going to Vegas because I just kind of eat whatever I can when I'm there, and it's all perfect and great. So are you excited about the holidays? Do you get a lot of good food with the family and stuff?
Yeah, I am excited. I mean, we just like we make like a ton of different stuff. I mean, he might be a buddy of yours. I make Marshall Sutcliffe's Mexican street corn every
Mhm.
year for Christmas. I mean, his recipe for it, like that he put up on YouTube, was like so good, and I made it once and everybody loved it, so now I'm stuck making it and if I don't, they're just like, where's the corn, you know? So
Mhm.
that's something that I'm looking forward to
It's like a
having.
lotte, or
Yeah, it's like a
yeah,
Mexican street corn, I guess, like
that
salad. So
sounds
it's like not
yeah.
on the cob, but it's
Mhm.
some good stuff. But yeah, we eat a lot. You know, it's like for Christmas and stuff, and New Year's, it's all the standards. But you know, throughout the year, I'm
Yeah.
always slamming down some you know more ethnic food and the like. But yeah,
Oh,
Tannon.
two things about that.
Yeah.
My wife's family is from South America, so I've actually had Mexican street corn, or elote on the street of Ecuador, like as street
Oh.
food and stuff, and it was absurd. Like obviously so good.
Yeah.
And two, it's funny that you mentioned Marshall Sutcliffe because when Jeff Foster, to kind of go back to, he messaged me about doing this job and coming on a Flesh and Blood. When he was doing it, I had a very honest conversation with him. I was like, hey man, like I'm not going to be great at this game in Vegas. Like I'm going to need time. I'm not going to be as prepared. Blah blah. He's like, oh, we don't need you to be like a professional. We need a Marshall Sutcliffe. He literally
Yeah.
used Marshall Sutcliffe's name, and so I was like, okay, yeah, so generic tall white guy, got it. Like I could do that job. So, and it's
Well,
really funny. I actually ran into him recently and told him that story, and he got a really good kick out of it.
oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, if you are the Marshall Sutcliffe of
I'll take
Flesh
it.
and Blood,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a good place to start. That's if that's the
Oh,
floor,
for sure.
the ceiling is infinite. So, yeah, thanks again for coming on. I'll just plug my stuff. You can follow me on
But
Twitter at FreshBudsPod, and then you can email the show freshbudspod@gmail.com, and the show's available everywhere. If you're already listening, obviously you know that. But yeah, thank you again, Tanner. I hope you have
absolutely, thanks
a
for
great
having
new
me.
year.
Oh, I will, and I'm really looking forward to this one. I think we're gonna do it pretty big this year if we're allowed to.
Well, I'm excited, and I hope we can make it work. I think so.
I hope so too.
All right, everybody, have a good weekend.